The $3.2 billion mistake. They fired me in the middle of a $3.2 billion negotiation. Not before, not after, during. I'm Victor Sullivan, 51 years old, and I just watched 16 years of work get torched in front of a room full of Saudis, Americans, and a 23-year-old who couldn't tell Arabic from Farsi. Fatima will handle translations moving forward, Brandon said, gesturing to the young woman at the end of the table. The next sentence from Sheikh al-Rashid's lead negotiator came through broken, half-translated. The rest just died in the air. They didn't even wait until the meeting ended. Victor, Brandon Price leaned forward, his voice carried across the polished table. Your position is no longer needed. HR will meet you downstairs. I thought I'd heard wrong for a second. The translation headset was still warm in my hands. Moments before, I'd finished relaying a critical statement from Arafi Holdings' chief negotiator, one that could have sealed the deal. Now every pair of eyes was on me. A week ago, Brandon had pulled me aside after a late prep session. You'll be right there next to me for the signing, Victor. Historic day for the company. I'd believed him. 16 years, I'd believed loyalty worked both ways. I was Senior Director of Middle East Operations at Weston & Dougherty. But that title didn't tell the story. I was the bridge between this company and the Gulf region. Only one who spoke Arabic fluently. Only one trusted to translate meaning without losing context. Deals lived or died on a single phrase I delivered. I'd worked through midnight calls, cultural misunderstandings, tense silences, handshake agreements no lawyer could draft. I'd done 3 tours in Army intelligence: Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, 1995 to 2007. Built relationships that took decades to earn. Those connections became this company's biggest asset when I joined the private sector in 2008. My reward was a public execution in the middle of a negotiation. Brandon Price was everything I wasn't. Fresh MBA from an Ivy League school. He valued speed over precision, templates over relationships. Where I saw people, he saw leverage. Where I heard layered meaning, he heard words to cut down for efficiency. And now, in front of our most important client, he decided I was replaceable. Sheikh al-Rashid's expression shifted. He looked from Fatima back to me, confirming what had just changed. I said one thing. You just voided clause 14.7. Check with legal. Brandon waved me off. We'll handle it. I picked up my notebook, looked directly at the sheikh. In Arabic, I said, Sharif, it was an honor. He stood up, didn't shake Brandon's hand, just watched me leave. Let me back up, tell you how I got here. Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, 1995 to 2007. Military intelligence, which sounds cooler than it was. Mostly I sat in rooms with tribal leaders, drank bad tea, and learned that the guy who talks the most knows the least. I learned Arabic from a 60-year-old translator named Rashid. He taught me something the Army couldn't. Respect earns more than rank. A handshake means more than a contract. Your word is your bond. That training saved more lives than bullets. One time in Fallujah, 2004, we had a tribal dispute about to blow up. 2 families, land rights. Our convoy was stuck in the middle. My CO wanted to just push through. I told him to give me 10 minutes. I sat down with both elders, didn't argue, didn't negotiate, just listened. Then I quoted a saying Rashid had taught me, about how the wise man plants trees whose shade he'll never sit under. Both elders went quiet. Then they started talking. To each other, not at each other. 30 minutes later, the road was clear. Our convoy moved through. No shots fired. My CO put me in for a commendation. I told him to give it to Rashid. He'd earned it years before I was born. When I left the Army in 2007, I had something most corporate guys didn't. Real relationships in the Gulf. Not LinkedIn connections. Real trust. The kind you earn by showing up, shutting up, and doing what you said you'd do. Weston & Dougherty hired me in 2008 to build their Middle East division from scratch. I was 35, no MBA, no corporate experience, just a Rolodex full of names and a reputation for keeping my word. First 3 years were slow. I wasn't closing billion-dollar deals. I was drinking coffee in Dubai offices, flying to Riyadh for meetings that went nowhere, building foundations. Corporate didn't get it. They wanted results, quarterly numbers. I kept telling them, This region doesn't work like that. Trust takes time. Then year 5 happened. We were in Riyadh. Rooms smelled like cardamom coffee and new leather. Contract on the table was worth $620 million. Defense logistics. It was slipping away fast. Our lead negotiator compared the deal to a camel chasing the sun. In English, it sounded poetic. In Arabic, in that dialect, it meant a fool chasing something he'd never catch. I saw the flicker in the chairman's eyes. The deal was seconds from collapsing. Didn't ask permission. Stepped forward. Laughed softly. Said in Arabic, "Better a camel chasing the sun than a merchant without shade." Old saying in his province. Nod to ambition with dignity. The room shifted. Shoulders relaxed. Chairman chuckled. Repeated the phrase. Signed the preliminary agreement right there. $620 million saved in 5 seconds. That story never made it into the quarterly report. My name wasn't on the success memo. Credit went to team effort. Corporate language for the guys at the head of the table. Wasn't just that one time either. I untangled a mistranslation in customs regulations, kept $60 million in goods from being seized at port, restructured contract clauses to honor both U.S. law and Islamic banking principles. Sat through Ramadan nights to ensure midnight calls landed at exactly the right moment in Mecca's time zone. 16 years of this, carrying a company's trust across languages, continents, cultures, every win stamped with the company's name, not mine. Every problem I solved disappeared into someone else's resume. Then Brandon Price arrived. 3 years ago, he swept in like a headline in a business magazine. Ivy League degree, tailored suits, resume that made board members smile. He'd been brought in to modernize our international operations. To Brandon, modernization meant stripping away anything he couldn't put in a spreadsheet. Language? Decorative. Nice to have, but unnecessary if you had airtight contract templates. Relationships? Outdated relics. Slower than email chains. Less reliable than binding clauses. Our first real clash came during a draft review for a partnership in Bahrain. Brandon skimmed the Arabic section like it was an afterthought. Signed the draft, sent it for finalization. What he didn't know, the document referred to a prohibited financial practice under Islamic law. Would have been rejected immediately. I caught it on my way out. Quietly rewrote the section, rephrased it to comply with Sharia-compliant banking standards. Resent the draft under his name. He never asked how the final version passed so smoothly. Doubt he even realized I'd touched it. Deal went through. Company earned millions. No one lost face. But it mattered to me. Because the next week I heard him in the boardroom. His voice carried through the half-open door. "We're streamlining," he was saying. "Too many moving parts slow us down. People like Victor. Good intentions, but they get bogged down in the details. We don't need to handhold clients through cultural quirks. We just need signatures." I stood in the hallway. Good intentions, details, cultural quirks. He'd just reduced 16 years of bridge building to quirks. I didn't go in. What's the point? But I remembered it. Week later, I caught him alone, conference room, after hours. "Brandon, we need to talk." He looked annoyed. "Victor, I'm late for the Bahrain contract. You almost killed it. Islamic banking prohibition. Line 47. I fixed it. You never noticed." His face went blank. "What are you—" "I'm saying you don't know what you don't know. And that's dangerous when you're playing with billions." I walked out. Left him standing there. Didn't feel good. Didn't feel bad. Just felt necessary. From then on, every meeting with Brandon felt like walking a line. He pushed for speed. I quietly ensured accuracy. He sent out documents half-read. I caught the errors before they became disasters. He carried himself like the man pulling the strings, never noticing the hands keeping the operation from collapsing. Then came the Arafi deal, $3.2 billion. Petroleum logistics contracts, supply chain commitments, tech transfer agreements, numbers that stopped feeling real. I'd been embedded in every step. Not because my title required it, because without me, the deal couldn't move forward. Arafi had a security protocol that was as much about respect as risk management. Every phase of the agreement required voice print authentication in Arabic from the designated primary liaison, me. It wasn't just a password, it was verification of trust. Removing the liaison mid-process would be like swapping a groom at the altar. I took the responsibility seriously. Weeks before the signing, I'd begun preparing more than translations. I commissioned a handcrafted inlaid wooden box from a Riyadh artisan, the kind used for storing family heirlooms. Inside, I placed rare med-jewel dates wrapped in gold-threaded cloth. It wasn't just a gift. It was a signal that Weston and Daughtry understood tradition. Alongside the gift, I wrote a speech entirely in Arabic. Not the sterile literal translations Brandon preferred. Something personal. It wove in regional proverbs, references to our shared history, subtle affirmations of mutual respect. The kind of address that could make a chairman feel not just valued but remembered. Still, I knew better than to assume anything was guaranteed. That's why late one evening, reviewing the master contract, I caught a clause buried deep in the legal language. Essential party continuity provision. If the named liaison was replaced before the voice print sequence was complete, the agreement would automatically terminate. No renegotiations, no delays, just void. I didn't mention it to Brandon, not because I wanted the deal to fail, but because I'd learned something over the years. Power doesn't always come from making threats. Sometimes it comes from knowing exactly where the floor is and who's standing too close to the edge. Rule from Kabul: never interrupt an enemy making a mistake. Next morning, during a prep session, Brandon dismissed my proposed speech as too long and too sentimental. I smiled, slid my notes back into my folder. Let him talk about contract templates and efficiency metrics. He didn't notice I wasn't arguing. Inside, I knew something he didn't. That was enough. Thursday began like any other negotiation day. Coffee gone cold beside annotated contracts. By 3:42 p.m., the air felt heavier. Maybe that was just me sensing the shift before it happened. I watched from my seat as the Arafi delegation settled in, gold cufflinks catching the light. Beside Brandon, Fatima clutched my inlaid wooden box like a misplaced prop. I'd spent weeks choosing that gift, crafting the words that should accompany it. Now those words were in her hands, printed in my careful Arabic script. Brandon cleared his throat. Before we begin the final review, a small presentation. Fatima stood. She read from my pages. The rhythm faltered immediately. A misplaced vowel turned lasting trust into delayed trust. Another slip made honored partnership sound like burdened partnership. I saw the confusion ripple through the Arafi side. Sideways glances. Sheikh al-Rashid's brows tightening when she presented the box. The moment was already gone. The sheikh accepted it with the polite smile reserved for strangers. Didn't open it. Didn't respond with the customary phrase that would signal mutual goodwill. The silence after was brief, but it filled the entire room. Then Brandon turned to me. "Victor, could you step outside for a moment?" I followed him into the hallway. HR was waiting at the end, envelope in hand. "This is effective immediately," Brandon said. "We appreciate your contributions." The words were crisp, bureaucratic. No acknowledgement of 16 years, no mention of the role I'd played getting us to this table. When we re-entered so I could collect my things, all eyes were on me. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing my hands shake. That night, I sat in my apartment, city noise outside. I poured a bourbon. Somewhere in a secure server thousands of miles away, the system handling the Arafi agreement was already processing my absence. Their voice print authentication protocol didn't care about titles or reasons, it only cared about continuity. My name had been coded into the agreement as primary liaison. Every step from initial handshake to final signature had been tied to my identity, my voice. When HR removed me from Weston and Daughtry's employee directory, it wasn't just a line on a spreadsheet disappearing. It was a trigger. At 8:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Encrypted notification from the system. One line. Primary removed. Protocol 9 engaged. No explanations, no dramatics. Just the cold precision of a rule being followed. Protocol 9 meant immediate suspension of all pending contract authorizations until a qualified, verified liaison replaced the removed party. Given the terms I'd read in the fine print, that replacement process would take weeks, if it happened at all. I set the phone down. My heart wasn't racing. Old training kicked in. This wasn't revenge in the cinematic sense. No grand declarations, no public humiliation. This was a quiet, inevitable consequence written into the bones of the agreement they'd been so eager to rush. At 9:13 p.m., another buzz. Private message from Khalid, a junior associate at Arafi I'd known for years. The message was short. "Tomorrow will be interesting." I read it twice. Powered my phone off. In the Gulf, your word is your bond. Break it once, you're done. I watched the city lights blur against the dark. In a few hours, people in corner offices would start to panic. Meetings would be called. Words like irreversible would begin to circulate. I wouldn't need to say a thing. By the time most of Weston and Dautry's staff were pouring their first cups of coffee, the damage was in motion. I was at my kitchen table, barefoot, watching sunlight creep across the wood grain when the first alert hit my phone at 9:15 a.m. Arafi Holdings withdraws from 3.2B agreement with Weston and Dautry, citing contract continuity breach. The language was diplomatic, regret, unforeseen circumstances, but the meaning was razor sharp. The market understood immediately. Within minutes, stock dropped 4%, then 6%. By the time I refreshed again, it had slid past 8%. I sipped my coffee slowly. The world was loud. My apartment was dead silent. At 9:32 a.m., the first financial news outlet published their analysis. They broke down the liaison removal clause in plain language for their readers. Remove the designated liaison mid-process, and the deal self-terminates. No room for appeal, no exceptions. The article spread fast. Investors didn't like the idea of a company missing something so fundamental, especially in a deal of this size. Words like oversight and negligence started appearing in headlines. I imagined Brandon's jaw tightening as he read them, the CEO pacing in his office, phones ringing without pause. Then came the clip. It surfaced first on a small Arabic business forum, then leapt to social media within the hour. Someone from the Arafi side had filmed a portion of Thursday's meeting, the part where Fatima, holding my wooden gift box, stumbled over the speech I'd written. The mistranslations were clear to anyone fluent. Lasting trust became delayed trust. Honored partnership warped into burdened partnership. The video was mercilessly captioned and shared. But beneath the humor was something heavier, a quiet confirmation to Arafi's peers that Weston had failed a basic cultural respect test. By 10 a.m., the clip had been viewed over 500,000 times in the Middle East alone. Business forum comments kept asking the same thing. Where is Sullivan? He would never let this happen. I leaned back in my chair, let the steam from my coffee curl against my face. There was no gloating, no need for it. This wasn't about revenge as a spectacle. It was about the precision of a consequence playing out exactly as it was written. Somewhere across the city, people were scrambling. Voices raised, strategies rewritten mid-sentence. Here in the quiet, I could feel the scale of it without needing to see it. By 11:30 a.m., the stock had dropped another 2%. Total, 10% in under 3 hours. LinkedIn was lighting up. Former colleagues, industry contacts, people I hadn't heard from in years, everyone asking the same question. What happened? I didn't respond to any of them. Rule from Baghdad: when your enemy is drowning, don't throw them a rope. Don't throw them an anchor either. Just step back and let physics do its work. By late Friday morning, the headlines stopped being about the deal and started being about leadership. The board of directors called an emergency session. Investors patched in from 3 continents. I wasn't in the room. But I'd been in enough of them over the years to picture it. Long mahogany table, tight-lipped directors, wall of muted video feeds showing faces framed by the glow of their home offices. Questions would be sharp, voices clipped, no time wasted on politeness. Reports later confirmed what I'd imagined. The CEO was pressed first. How could a continuity clause that basic have been overlooked? Why had the designated liaison been removed at the final stage? He fumbled through an answer about operational restructuring. Then they turned to Brandon. Why had he replaced the only fluent Arabic speaker during a negotiation with an Arabic-speaking client? His reply about streamlining processes was met with silence, then a single question from one of our largest Middle Eastern investors. Do you even know who Arafi trusted in that room? It wasn't Brandon. It never had been. Several of those investors had worked with me personally over the years. They remembered the late-night calls, the careful translations, the way I could untangle a misunderstanding before it turned into an insult. To them, I wasn't just Weston's employee. I was the bridge that made their business possible. And now that bridge was gone. Word reached me by early afternoon. Brandon had been told to reach out to me. Not the CEO, not HR, Brandon himself. I didn't answer when the phone rang, didn't return the first text or the second. I let the silence do the work. At 10:47 a.m. Saturday, my phone finally rang with a number I recognized. Brandon, I answered. We need you back, Victor. Name your price. It's not about price, Brandon. It's about a handshake you didn't understand. I hung up. Didn't block the number. Just set the phone down and went back to my coffee. By Saturday afternoon, the stock had dropped another 2%. Total damage, 12% over 2 days. Market cap down roughly $2.1 billion on a company worth about $18 billion. The math was simple. The $3.2 billion Arafi deal represented future revenue, but the market was pricing in something bigger, risk. The risk that Weston and Dotrey didn't understand how to do business in the Gulf anymore. And they were right. Sunday morning, the business press started connecting dots. One article titled, "When Corporate Efficiency Kills Billion-Dollar Deals," became the most shared piece in the industry that week. The author, a former diplomat I'd worked with in Baghdad, didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew the story could read between the lines. Modern MBA culture prioritizes speed and standardization, he wrote, but in regions where trust is currency and relationships span decades, replacing experienced liaisons mid-negotiation isn't efficiency. It's corporate suicide. The article went viral. 1.2 million views in 48 hours. Comment section was brutal. This is what happens when consultants run operations. They fired the one guy who actually knew what he was doing. Weston and Dotrey just learned a $3.2 billion lesson about respecting expertise. I read it once, closed the browser, didn't need to read it again. Monday morning, the board made their move. Press release went out at 9:00 a.m. EST, leadership restructuring at Weston and Dotrey. Brandon Price, VP of International Operations, was being reassigned to domestic strategic planning, effective immediately. Corporate speak for, "You're done with international deals." His new office would be on the 15th floor. Used to be the 32nd. No assistant, no travel budget, no access to the client relationships he'd just destroyed. The CEO issued a statement about recommitting to cultural competency in global markets and ensuring continuity in key partnerships. Translation: we screwed up and we're trying to fix it before more investors bail, but the damage was done. By Monday afternoon, word started spreading through Middle East business channels. Informal, quiet, but devastating. The Middle East Trade Council, a consortium of major Gulf state investors and corporations, had placed Weston and Dotrey on a watch list. Not a formal blacklist. Worse, a warning to members that the company had demonstrated insufficient cultural liaison protocols for high-value engagements. In that world, reputation is everything. A warning like that was a death sentence for new business. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched the dominoes fall. A $780 million infrastructure project in Dubai, gone. Awarded to a competitor. A $1.1 billion joint venture in Abu Dhabi, postponed indefinitely, then canceled. A $950 million logistics contract in Qatar, never even made it to negotiation stage. They went with another firm. By the end of the month, Weston and Dotrey had lost an estimated $4.5 billion in projected contracts over the next 3 years. All because Brandon thought a handshake was just a formality. I didn't gloat, didn't post on LinkedIn, didn't return calls from reporters wanting comments. I just waited. The invitation came on a Monday morning, 3 weeks after the collapse. Formal letter on Arafi Holdings, thick cream stationery, delivered by courier to my apartment. They wanted me at their New York office. Tuesday at 10 a.m. No explanation, just the invitation. I arrived 15 minutes early. Their Midtown headquarters was quiet power, marble floors, brushed brass accents, the faint scent of oud drifting through the air. The receptionist greeted me in Arabic. I responded in kind, felt an ease in the words I hadn't felt since leaving Weston. They led me into a conference room where Sheikh Al-Rashid himself was waiting, flanked by two senior partners I knew well. We'd spent years building trust, over late-night calls, careful negotiations, small cultural gestures that had nothing to do with contracts but everything to do with relationships. "Victor," the sheikh began. His English was measured but warm. "We would like you to join us, not as an employee of another company, but as our chief advisor for North American operations." I listened, hands folded in my lap, as they outlined the offer. Retainer of $485,000 annually, plus performance bonuses tied to deal closures, equity stake in their North American ventures. More importantly, I would have full discretion over how U.S. engagements were handled. No middlemen, no streamlining from executives who didn't understand the stakes. I could work from New York, Washington, or Riyadh. My choice. They trusted my judgment. It wasn't just an offer, it was recognition, the kind that went beyond numbers. Then the sheikh leaned back, studied my face. "Do you know why we withdrew from Weston so quickly?" he asked. I shook my head. "We had been testing them," he said. "We wanted to see if they valued the person who carried the relationship or if they believed the relationship belonged to the company." He paused. "Let that sink in. When they removed you, they answered our question." The room was still for a moment. I thought of Brandon's dismissal in the boardroom, his talk of streamlining, his inability to understand that trust isn't a line item on a spreadsheet. I thought of 16 years of carrying other people's wins on my back, of being the invisible hand that kept deals from falling apart. I thought of Rashid in Fallujah, teaching me that respect is earned, not given, that your word is your bond. "When can you start?" the sheikh asked. "I'll need 2 weeks to close out some personal matters," I said. "After that, I'm yours." We shook hands. The sheikh switched back to Arabic. "It is good to work with someone who understands more than the words." Leaving the building, the city felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just clearer. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't carrying the weight of being undervalued. I was carrying the weight of being chosen. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 3 weeks. I went for a walk. Not to think, not to plan, just to walk. Central Park was alive with the usual chaos. Joggers, dog walkers, tourists taking selfies. I bought a coffee from a cart, sat on a bench near the reservoir, watched the light play off the water. My phone buzzed. Text from Khalid at Arafi. "Welcome to the team. Looking forward to working together." I smiled, typed back, "Likewise." Another text came through. Unknown number. I opened it. "Victor, this is Brandon. I know I don't deserve a response, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. You were right about everything. If you're ever willing to talk, I'd appreciate the chance to learn from my mistakes." I read it twice. Part of me wanted to ignore it, let him sit with what he'd done. But Rashid's voice was in my head. "The wise man plants trees whose shade he'll never sit under." I typed back. "Noted. Focus on being better at your next job. Don't make the same mistake twice." Short. Professional. No bridge burned, but no bridge rebuilt either. That evening, I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to my contact list. The people I'd worked with over 16 years. The ones who'd reached out asking what happened. I kept it simple. "Starting next month, I'll be serving as Chief Advisor for North American Operations at Arafi Holdings. Looking forward to continuing the work we've built together. Best, Victor." Sent it to 147 people. By the next morning, I had 89 responses. "Congratulations. Well deserved. About time someone recognized your value." One message stood out. From a former colleague at Weston who'd left 2 years ago. "Victor, I watched you carry that company for over a decade. Glad you're finally somewhere that sees it. Let me know if you ever need anything." I closed the laptop, poured a bourbon, sat by the window, and watched the city lights come on one by one. Tomorrow, I'd start planning, building the infrastructure for my new role, reaching out to contacts, setting up meetings. But tonight, I just sat with it, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's living in a space they said you didn't deserve, doing the work they thought you couldn't, and never needing to look back. The next 2 weeks moved fast. I closed out my apartment lease, packed 16 years of my life into boxes. Most of it went to storage. Some went to Goodwill. I kept what mattered. Photos from Kuwait, Rashid's old Arabic dictionary, a few books, travel light, move fast, old army habit. Arafi wanted me to start in their New York office, get acclimated to their systems, meet the North American team, but the sheikh had made it clear, after 90 days, I should spend time in Riyadh, understand the headquarters operations, build relationships with the leadership council. I was good with that. Riyadh felt like going home in a way New York never had. My first day at Arafi's New York office was nothing like my first day at Weston 16 years ago. No one questioned my methods. No one asked me to justify relationship-building trips. No one told me I was too slow or too focused on details. The senior partners treated me like what I was, an expert. Khalid, my main contact, walked me through their current North American portfolio, $8.7 billion in active projects, another $12 billion in pipeline negotiations. We want your input on all of it, he said, not just translations, strategy, cultural advisement, risk assessment. I spent the first week just reading contracts, proposals, background files on potential partners. Found 3 major issues in the first 48 hours. Cultural misunderstandings that could have cost them millions. Fixed them before they became problems. Khalid just nodded. This is why we wanted you. Week 3, I flew to Houston for a meeting with an oil services company. Potential $1.4 billion partnership. Their CEO was old school Texas. Cowboy boots, firm handshake, straight talker. Heard about what happened at Weston, he said. That was a damn shame. You built that Middle East operation from scratch. Appreciate that, I said. But I'm focused on what's next, not what was. Good attitude. He leaned back in his chair. So what's Arafi really looking for here? I could have given him the corporate pitch, the one about synergies and strategic alignment. Instead, I told him the truth. They're looking for partners who keep their word, who understand that in their world, a handshake matters more than a clause. If you can do that, we'll make a lot of money together. If you can't, we'll know in the first 90 days and part ways clean. He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. I like you, Victor. You don't bullshit. Life's too short, I said. We signed a letter of intent that afternoon, $1.4 billion deal. My first major win with Arafi. Back in New York, word spread fast. The guy from Weston was closing deals at Arafi. Big ones. My LinkedIn blew up. Former colleagues, competitors, recruiters. Everyone wanted to know if I was hiring, if I was taking meetings, if I'd consult on their Middle East strategies. I kept my responses short and professional, focused on the work. Month 2, the sheikh called me personally. Victor, the board would like you in Riyadh next month. We're hosting a regional summit, 15 countries, $40 billion in potential projects over the next 5 years. We want you to lead the North American partnership discussions. I'll be there, I said. One more thing, he added. Brandon Price from Weston reached out to our office. He's asking for an introduction, says he wants to apologize in person. I was quiet for a moment. What did you tell him? I told him I'd ask you first. This is your decision, Victor, not ours. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, let him live with what he'd done, but Rashid's voice was there again. The wise man plants trees. Tell him I'll meet him for coffee. 30 minutes, New York, public place, but make it clear, I'm not interested in rehashing the past. If he wants advice on how to do better, I'll give it. If he wants absolution, he's talking to the wrong person. Understood, the sheikh said. I'll pass that along. Brandon and I met at a coffee shop in Midtown. Thursday morning, 10 a.m. He looked different, thinner, tired. The confidence that used to radiate off him was gone. Thanks for meeting me, he said. You've got 30 minutes, I said. What do you want to say? He took a breath. I screwed up. Badly. I thought I understood international business because I'd read the case studies and run the models. But I didn't understand people. I didn't understand trust. You're right, I said. You didn't. The board reassigned me. Domestic strategic planning. It's basically corporate purgatory. I spend my days reviewing quarterly reports and attending budget meetings. No clients, no deals, no travel. That's what happens, I said. I know. He looked down at his coffee. I'm not asking for your help getting my old job back. That ship sailed. I'm asking for advice. How do I come back from this? I studied him for a moment. He was serious. This wasn't about saving face. He genuinely wanted to know. You start by accepting that some mistakes you don't come back from, I said. Not in the same place, not in the same way. You burned a $3.2 billion bridge. That's on your permanent record. He nodded, didn't argue. But, I continued, if you actually learn something, you focus on the next opportunity. You slow down. You listen more than you talk. You treat expertise with respect instead of seeing it as an obstacle to efficiency. That's it? He asked. That's it, I said. There's no magic formula. You either get it or you don't. You didn't get it before. Maybe you will next time. I finished my coffee, stood up. One more thing, I said. The people you step on while climbing the ladder are the same people you meet on the way down. Remember that. I left him sitting there. Didn't look back. Month 3, I flew to Riyadh. The desert sun was high when my car pulled into Arafi Holdings headquarters. Glass facade reflecting golden light. The kind of architecture designed to make you straighten your posture before you reach the door. I stepped out, heels clicking against polished stone. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't walking into someone else's company. I was walking into my own future. Inside, the air was cool, scented faintly with sandalwood. The lobby's marble floor mirrored intricate geometric patterns on the high ceiling. I was greeted not as an accessory to a larger team, but as the person they had chosen. By name, by history, by trust. An attendant guided me to the top floor. The sheikh and senior partners were waiting. We shook hands, exchanged greetings in Arabic, sat down to discuss the upcoming regional summit and the North American partnership strategy. This time, there were no interruptions. No one streamlining my words, no one questioning the value of cultural nuance. My recommendations were noted, then implemented on the spot. It was a quiet kind of victory, but it was mine. That afternoon, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in my new office, looking out over the city. From this height, the streets looked like fine threads, each intersection a decision, each road a possibility. On my desk sat a photo, my old army unit in Kuwait, 1998. Next to it, the wooden box I'd commissioned for the original Arafi deal. The sheikh had returned it to me with a note. Some bridges take 25 years to build. This one will stand. My phone rang. Unknown U.S. number, area code I recognized. Weston and Dotry headquarters. I looked at the screen, didn't answer, just set it down and went back to work. That evening, I met with the sheikh for dinner. Private room, traditional meal. We talked about the summit, about expansion plans, about the future. Victor, he said, switching to Arabic. In our culture, we have a saying, the patient man eats ripe fruit, the hasty man eats stones. I nodded. I've heard it. Brandon Price ate stones, he said. You built an orchard. I smiled, raised my glass. To orchards. To orchards, he echoed. Walking back to my hotel that night, the desert air was warm against my face. The city lights stretched out in every direction. I thought about the last 16 years, the deals I'd saved, the bridges I'd built, the invisible work that kept everything running. I thought about Brandon, sitting in his 15th floor office, learning lessons the hard way. I thought about Rashid, teaching me in Fallujah that respect is earned, not given. And I thought about what came next, the summit, the partnerships, the work still to be done. Some people spend their careers climbing ladders in companies that never see them, carrying other people's wins, hoping someone will notice. I did that for 16 years. Not anymore. Now I was building something that had my name on it, not hidden in the fine print, not buried in the acknowledgments. Right there at the top, Chief Advisor, North American Operations, Arafi Holdings. The bridge wasn't just standing. It was mine to cross, and I wasn't looking back.